Before the first hint of sunrise touches the horizon, the world along the Nile lies wrapped in a deep, peaceful quiet. The desert night is cool, almost cold, and the darkness feels vast and heavy, stretching endlessly across the dunes. Yet within this darkness, life is already shifting. Ancient Egypt does not wait for the sun to wake. It prepares itself in silence long before light returns. Inside a modest mud brick home, a woman opens her eyes. She has slept lightly, aware as always of the sounds around her, her children breathing softly, the faint rustle of palm leaf mats under shifting bodies, the muffled noises of animals stirring outside. She rises slowly, feeling the chilled air against her skin. The house is simple, but it is comfortable in the way familiarity always is. Its walls, made of sun-dried mud bricks, hold memories of generations. The coolness inside the home is temporary. Soon, the heat will return and fill every corner. The woman moves quietly so as not to wake her family. Egyptians rise early because their work depends on the gentler morning hours. She kneels beside a clay jar filled with water drawn from the Nile the previous day. Water is precious. Even a single jar represents effort. She pours a little into a small basin and washes her face, letting the cold water sharpen her senses. Then she smooths her linen dress, simple but clean, and steps outside into the faint early dark. The village is barely visible, but she can sense its contours. Low mud brick houses, narrow pathways carved by centuries of footsteps, the smell of damp earth mixed with fading night air. Somewhere nearby, a rooster gives its first hesitant call. A donkey shifts, tugging on the rope that ties it to a wooden post, and further away, the subtle whisper of the Nile flows steadily, eternal and calm. Inside the house, her husband wakes. He sits up slowly, rubbing his eyes. His workday begins long before the sun clears the horizon. He is a farmer, like most men in this village. His life revolves around small strips of fertile land along the floodplain. Barley, wheat, flax. These crops sustain not just his family, but the entire kingdom. Pharaohs may rule Egypt, but it is farmers who keep it alive. Before anything else, he eats a simple breakfast. The woman returns inside with leftover bread, hardened slightly overnight, but still good. She places a few dates beside it, a touch of sweetness at the start of the day. Finally, she pours a small jug of beer, thick, nutritious, slightly sour. Not the modern drink we call beer, but a staple food made from fermented barley loaves. Even children drink it, though theirs is watered down. The children begin waking. The youngest stirs first, stretching with soft whimpers, then crawling toward the morning meal. Older siblings rise slowly, accustomed to early mornings. They rub their eyes, smile at the familiar faces, and gather around the bread and dates. Childhood in ancient Egypt is simple, unhurried, and deeply cared for. Parents adore their children, believing them gifts from the gods, and they protect them fiercely. Once breakfast is shared, the woman begins her tasks. She collects grain to grind later in the morning. She checks the jars of water, making sure enough remains for cooking, washing, and mixing dough. She tidies the sleeping mats and adjusts the reed mats covering the floor. Every action is purposeful. Every gesture contributes to the smooth rhythm of the day. Meanwhile, the man prepares for work. He gathers his tools, wooden hoes, a sickle with flint or bronze teeth, rope baskets, and a small stone used for sharpening blades. These tools are worn but well maintained, the same designs used by his father and grandfather before him. Egyptian farming has changed little over centuries because it does not need to. The land, the water, and the seasons provide all the structure his work requires. He steps outside, and the sky is beginning to shift. The first traces of dawn color the edges of the east in pale gold and soft rose. The world awakens slowly. A few neighbors step out of their homes, greeting one another with quiet nods. Another man leads a donkey carrying empty baskets, ready to fill them with vegetables from the fields. A group of younger men gather near the edge of the village, preparing to travel together to larger farm plots farther from home. As he joins them, the path beneath their feet feels cool and smooth. The village is laid out without planning or design. Its shape grew naturally over time. Houses cluster close together for shade and safety. Narrow alleys twist between them. Roofs serve as storage spaces, sleeping quarters during the hottest months, and gathering spots for evening conversations. The smell of baking begins to drift through the air. The village baker has already lit his clay oven. The aroma of rising dough mixes with the scent of smoke and earth. Bakers start earlier than everyone else because bread fuels the entire population. Each household relies on their work. As the man walks toward the distant fields, he glances at the Nile. The river glimmers faintly in the half-light. Calm, reflective, royal. It is not merely water. It is the source of all life, the reason Egypt exists at all. The river's rhythms guide planting, harvesting, and taxes. A good flood brings abundance. A poor flood brings fear. The man and his neighbors reach the edge of the fields just as the sun peaks above the horizon. The floodplain stretches before them in stripes of dark soil and green growth. Farther away, the desert rises suddenly, vast, silent, and inhospitable. Egypt is a narrow ribbon of life bordered by death. The men begin their tasks. They clear channels for water, dig into the moist earth, inspect sprouts for pests, and adjust irrigation ditches. The sun climbs higher. Shadows shorten. The heat begins its steady climb. Yet the men work without complaint. This is their world. Their ancestors did the same. Their children will follow them. The land provides, but only through effort. Back in the village, the woman grinds grain using two heavy stones, pushing and pulling with practiced strength. A mother calling to her children mixes with the sound of goats bleating. A potter shapes clay into bowls. A carpenter chisels a piece of wood. A scribe settles onto a stool, dipping his reed pen into a cake of black ink. The village awakens fully, alive with purpose. Morning in ancient Egypt is not dramatic or loud. It is quiet, steady, predictable, and deeply human. It reflects a civilization built not on sudden change, but on endless continuity. And as the sun rises higher, casting its warm light over the fields and homes, a new day begins fully. Another link in an unbroken chain stretching thousands of years. As the sun climbs higher above the horizon, the Nile Valley shifts from the soft stillness of dawn into the first movements of a fully waking civilization. The golden light spreads across the mud-brick walls, illuminating small courtyards, dusty paths, and fields where farmers bend low over the earth. The air is warming quickly, and with it, the pace of life picks up. While men continue tending to the fields, an equally intricate rhythm unfolds inside the village, a rhythm held together not by the land, but by the hands that run the household. Inside her home, the woman kneels beside the grinding stone. Two slabs of hard, heavy rock, one fixed to the ground, the other shaped to fit comfortably in her hands. She pours a handful of barley grains onto the flat stone and begins the slow, repeated motion of grinding them into flour. It is a physical task, one that strains the arms, shoulders, and back. But she does it every day, as her mother did before her, and as her daughters will one day do, too. The scraping sound of stone against stone is one of the oldest rhythms in human history. In Egypt it is nearly constant. Flour is needed for bread, bread is needed for survival, and survival depends on work done early in the day, before heat overwhelms the body. As she grinds, she pauses occasionally to stretch her hands or brush sand off the stone. Outside, she hears the chatter of neighbors beginning their own routines. Women call to one another from doorways. A dog trots past, nose to the ground. A pair of goats wander freely near a low fence, chewing on scraps of vegetation. The oldest daughter appears in the doorway, already awake and alert. She carries a small clay cup and sits beside her mother, waiting for instructions. Children in Egypt are expected to learn by watching, not by being formally taught. The girl watches the grinding motion carefully. She has seen it thousands of times, yet she studies it as if observing something new. Her mother smiles and hands her a small handful of grain. The girl eagerly takes the top stone and tries the motion herself, awkwardly at first, then with better rhythm. In another corner of the village, a baker emerges from his workshop. His oven is already firing, fueled by dry wood and bundles of papyrus scraps. The heat radiates outward, making the surrounding area warmer than the rest of the street. He kneads a mound of dough, working quickly, forming small, round loaves, then placing them into the oven. Baking is an essential craft. Every household depends on bread, and while many women bake small loaves at home, the larger, more efficient ovens of the village baker can produce quantities impossible in individual houses. Nearby, a potter sits at his wheel. The wheel itself is a simple device, two discs connected by a spindle, the lower disc spun by hand or foot. The potter centers a lump of wet clay and begins shaping it into a jar. His hands are steady, his movements confident. Pottery is the backbone of storage. Water jars, grain containers, beer vessels, and cooking pots all begin their lives on wheels like this one. As the potter works, children gather around to watch. To them, the transformation from shapeless mud to a perfect bowl feels magical. A scribe passes by, carrying a bundle of papyrus scrolls under one arm. He walks with purpose toward the edge of the village, where a small administrative outpost stands. His position is respected. Literacy gives him influence. Farmers require his service when recording harvests, resolving disputes, or managing land boundaries. As he walks, he rehearses a list of measurements he must verify, tax records from the previous flood season. In Egypt, record-keeping is not a luxury. It is the foundation of order. Further down the street, a merchant arranges a display of goods in front of his home. Small pottery jars filled with oil, bundles of herbs tied with reed string, tiny packets of incense, and bowls of dried fish caught the previous day. He calls out gently to passers-by, announcing what he has for sale or trade. Commerce in Egypt is personal. There are no large shops or market squares in small villages. Instead, people buy and trade from their neighbors, forming a network of constant interaction. A woman carrying a bundle of flax walks past the merchant. She stops to inspect a jar of oil, rubbing a small amount between her fingers to test its quality. After a short negotiation, she trades a length of woven cloth for the oil. The exchange is quick, respectful, and familiar. Money exists only in its earliest forms. Barter still shapes most everyday transactions. Children weave through the narrow pathways of the village, darting between adults, inventing games as they go. A group gathers near a shaded wall, drawing shapes in the dust with sticks. Another group picks up stones and challenges each other to toss them as far as possible. Their laughter echoes against the walls, a lively contrast to the quiet focus of adults working nearby. In a quiet corner behind one home, a man kneels beside a goat, milking it into a small bowl. His movements are gentle, careful not to startle the animal. Milk is not plentiful, but it is cherished, especially for young children and the elderly. Once the bowl is full, he carries it inside to his wife, who stores it in a cool corner of the house where the shade keeps it fresh as long as possible. By now, the sun is higher, casting long beams of warm light across the village. The sky deepens into a clear, brilliant blue. The Nile glimmers in the distance, its surface calm and reflective. The river will grow busier soon. Fishermen will bring in their morning catch. Boatmen will begin transporting goods along the water. Families will gather near the banks to wash clothes, fill jars, and soak reeds for weaving. The village hums with a kind of organized simplicity. Every person, every task, every ritual contributes to the stability of the community. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels chaotic. Life here is not defined by speed, but by tradition, steady, predictable, and deeply rooted in a world shaped by the river and the gods. As the morning unfolds and the sun climbs toward its midday strength, Egypt enters the heart of the day. The rhythm established long before dawn now expands, touching every life, every home, every field. What might seem like ordinary moments to the people living them form the foundation of one of the greatest civilizations in human history. By the time the morning grows fully bright, the Nile Valley is alive in every direction. The heat has not yet reached its peak, but it has begun to settle gently across the land, nudging people into a steady rhythm of work before the sun becomes harsh. And while the village hums with activity, another world, equally important, stirs along the banks of the great river. The Nile is more than a resource. It is the backbone of Egyptian life. Even these early hours draw people toward it, each with their own purpose. A group of fishermen is already working, their small wooden boats rocking gently on the rippling surface. They cast wide nets into the water, their arms moving with practiced ease. The Nile provides fish in abundance: tilapia, catfish, perch. And these fishermen supply much of the protein in the Egyptian diet. On shore, an older man sits repairing a net, his fingers weaving new fibers into damaged sections with patient concentration. Nets fray quickly. Thorns, rocks, and fish themselves tear through the woven threads. Repairing them isn't optional. It's survival. As he works, he hums softly, a tune he learned from his own father decades ago, a melody passed down as reliably as the river's flow. Nearby, a group of women kneels at the water's edge. They wash clothes by dipping them repeatedly into the river, scrubbing them with smooth stones, and laying them out to dry on the sun-warmed ground. Their voices carry across the riverbank as they talk and laugh, exchanging news, discussing family matters, and telling stories both old and new. The Nile has always been a gathering place, a social center where life unfolds in small, shared moments. A young girl fills a clay jar with river water, balancing it carefully before lifting it onto her shoulder. Even children are responsible for collecting water, a daily task woven into the rhythm of life. The jar is heavy, but she carries it with practiced grace, walking barefoot along the familiar path toward her home. A little farther along the bank, a reed cutter wades into shallow water. He gathers tall papyrus reeds, cutting them near the base with a bronze blade. Papyrus is versatile, used to make baskets, mats, sandals, boats, and even the precious paper-like sheets the scribes write on. The bundle he collects today will be soaked, split, woven, or pressed into new forms by evening or tomorrow. At a shaded spot beneath a cluster of palm trees, a group of young men works together to load goods onto a small riverboat. The vessel, made of wooden planks bound securely with rope, rocks as they place jars of grain, bundles of vegetables, and small crates of pottery inside. They will travel downstream later in the morning, trading their goods with other villages and gathering supplies unavailable at home. The Nile is their highway, and it connects them to a network of communities stretching from the delta in the north to the far reaches of Nubia in the south. A man steps onto the boat and checks the ropes securing a wide, triangular sail. Egypt is blessed with good wind patterns. The current flows south to north, but the wind often blows north to south. With this natural advantage, Egyptians can sail in one direction and row or drift in the other. Few civilizations have had such a perfect river. As the wind stirs, palm leaves sway overhead. Birds skim the surface of the water, hunting for small fish. A crocodile lies motionless near the opposite bank, half submerged, an ancient predator blending perfectly into its surroundings. Egyptians respect the Nile's creatures, both dangerous and gentle. They understand their place in the natural world and rarely take unnecessary risks. Back in the village, more people prepare to head to the river. A mother gathers woven baskets to wash. A boy runs ahead with a small fishing spear, hoping to catch something on his own. A pair of elderly women walk slowly toward the water, leaning on wooden staffs for balance. They will soak reeds to prepare them for weaving. Their hands are worn and rough from a lifetime of work, but their movements remain steady. As the sun climbs higher, the river brightens, the water sparkling like scattered gold. The sky is a clear, brilliant blue with no clouds in sight. It is a typical Egyptian morning, predictable, warm, and full of purpose. And while the Nile provides water and food, it also shapes culture, belief, and society. Across the river, the West Bank lies quiet. Unlike the bustling East Bank, the West is associated with death and the afterlife. Egyptians believe the West, the direction of the setting sun, belongs to spirits, tombs, and eternal journeys. Villages and cities typically stand on the East Bank, where the sun rises and life begins anew each day. But tombs, cemeteries, and temples dedicated to the dead are built on the West, creating a clear, symbolic separation between the world of the living and the world beyond. Even now, workers may be preparing to travel across the river later in the day, carrying tools to carve tomb walls or sculpt limestone blocks. Tomb workers are craftsmen of the highest order. Their art is meant to last forever, so precision and devotion define their craft. Many work in teams, singing work songs to maintain rhythm as they carve scenes of daily life, religious rituals, and offerings to the gods. Back on the East Bank, activity continues to grow. More fishermen paddle out onto the river, more traders arrive with goods. Children splash playfully in shallow pools along the shore. The Nile is not just a river. It is a stage where countless small stories unfold each morning, each one part of a civilization held together by the steady pulse of the water. As the sun gains strength, the work will become more difficult. But for now, the river remains cool, welcoming, and alive with movement. It is the lifeline of Egypt, offering food, transportation, livelihood, and meaning. Without it, the land would be nothing but desert. With it, Egypt becomes one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. And this morning, like every morning for thousands of years, begins with gratitude for the river that sustains all life. As the morning deepens and the light grows stronger, life in the village begins to shift from the quiet routines of early dawn to the structured rhythm of full activity. The sounds of work blend together, wooden tools striking soil, the scrape of grinding stones, the chatter of neighbors passing each other on narrow paths. Each part of the village seems to pulse with purpose, and yet, despite the bustle, nothing feels rushed. Life here moves with a confidence born from repetition, from doing the same essential tasks day after day, generation after generation. In one home at the edge of the village, an elderly man steps outside into the brightening sunlight. His back is slightly bent, his hands marked by years of labor, and his steps are slow but sure. He carries a small basket filled with dried herbs and tiny clay pots sealed with mud. Though he no longer works in the fields, his knowledge is invaluable. He is a healer, part herbalist, part midwife, part community doctor. His remedies are simple but effective, drawn from centuries of trial and memory. Today he is delivering a salve made from honey, resin, and crushed herbs to a family whose youngest child has developed a small infection. Honey has powerful healing properties, and in Egypt it is considered a gift of the gods. As he walks, children run past him, laughing loudly. They leap over a shallow ditch, chasing each other with a game that requires no tools but imagination. The old man smiles as he watches them. To him, this scene is timeless. He saw it in his youth, when he was the one running. He saw it when his own children played in the dust. Now he watches another generation grow up in the same streets. In Egypt, where life is tied to the river and the seasons, time feels circular, like the sun that rises and sets, but always returns. A woman in the doorway of a neighboring home calls out to him, asking when he will have more dried mint leaves to trade. He promises to bring some tomorrow. She thanks him and returns inside to tend to a pot warming over a small clay hearth. The scent of simmering lentils and herbs floats into the street. It is almost midday, and many women are preparing food before the heat becomes overwhelming. In the center of the village, a group of men gather near a shaded area where a stone bench has been placed for public use. They exchange updates about crops, the river level, and small bits of news from nearby settlements. One man mentions that a trader from the north passed through yesterday with tales of new goods arriving from the Mediterranean. Another man speaks of a neighbor whose field was damaged by wandering cattle. These conversations are not idle. They are the informal threads that keep the community connected, informed, and interdependent. A young boy approaches the men, carrying a wooden board and small carved pieces. He asks if anyone wants to play a game of senet. The game is ancient, older than the pyramids, and beloved by Egyptians of all ages. Its rules are partly strategy, partly chance, and entirely captivating. Two of the men accept the invitation, and the boy quickly sets up the pieces on the grid of squares. As they begin to play, the conversation continues, weaving between moves, laughter, and friendly challenges. In a society that values balance and harmony, games are more than entertainment. They are reflections of cosmic order and the journey through life. Further down the street, a craftsman works at his small workshop. He is a jeweler, skilled with beads, metal, and stone. His hands move with patience as he strings tiny, colorful beads together to form a necklace. Jewelry in ancient Egypt is not reserved for the wealthy alone. Even ordinary families wear simple ornaments to express beauty, devotion, or protection. The jeweler's workbench is cluttered with tools, bronze picks, polishing stones, strands of copper wire, and a small hammer used to shape soft metal. He pauses occasionally to examine a bead in the sunlight, checking for imperfections before adding it to the necklace. Nearby, a mother comforts her child, who scraped his knee while playing. She washes the wound with water poured from a small jar, and then applies a paste made from crushed acacia leaves. The child sniffles but calms quickly. Small injuries are common in a village filled with dirt paths, rough surfaces, and energetic children. Mothers know exactly what to do in these moments. Their knowledge, like the healers, is passed down through generations. Just outside the village boundaries, farmers continue their work under the strengthening sun. They spread manure across patches of soil to enrich the earth, repair small canals that direct water from the river to their crops, and inspect the leaves of barley plants for signs of pests. The work is physically demanding and requires constant attention, but the farmers understand their responsibility clearly. Their labor sustains not just their families, but the kingdom itself. Grain is the foundation of Egyptian economy, food, and stability. Every basket harvested helps ensure that temples are supplied, soldiers are fed, and people across the land can survive another year. A group of younger farmers work together to clear a blocked irrigation channel. They use wooden hose to remove mud and debris, creating a smooth path for water to flow freely. As they work, they sing a rhythmic song in unison. The melody is simple, but it keeps them moving together at the same pace, turning heavy labor into something almost graceful. Their voices echo across the fields, blending with the rustling of reeds and the distant call of birds. In another field, a man checks the level of water filling a small basin where vegetables grow. He kneels beside the seedlings, gently brushing soil from the leaves. Vegetables are valuable. They add variety to meals and provide essential nutrients. He inspects the plants carefully, making sure none are wilting from lack of water. In the distance, he sees his neighbor waving. They have agreed to share labor today, helping each other complete tasks faster before the weather grows hotter. Back in the village, the jeweler finishes the necklace and lays it on a cloth inside his workshop. A customer arrives, a middle-aged woman carrying a small jar of beer for trade. They negotiate briefly, agreeing on a fair exchange. The woman pays with both beer and a small bundle of flax fibers. Both leave satisfied. In Egypt, fairness in trade is not just polite, it is part of maintaining Ma'at, the universal order and balance that governs society. As the sun approaches its peak, the activity across the village slows slightly. People retreat into shaded areas, pausing to rest or drink water. The shadows shrink, the surfaces grow hotter, and the air takes on the dense warmth that defines Egyptian midday. Yet the sense of purpose does not fade. Life continues, steadily, predictably, supported by routines as old as the land itself. The morning has passed, but the day is far from over. As the sun climbs toward its peak, the air in the village grows noticeably heavier. The morning coolness fades completely, replaced by the familiar heat that defines life in Egypt. People know better than to work without pacing themselves. Even the strongest laborers respect the midday sun. So the village shifts into a slower, more measured rhythm, not stopping entirely, but adjusting, just as it has for thousands of years. Near the center of the village, a group of women gather in a shaded courtyard. A few palm trees and a reed canopy provide relief from the harsh sunlight. Here they continue grinding grain, shaping dough, or preparing vegetables for the midday meal. Talking while they work is as natural as breathing. They share stories, advice, and rituals, passing knowledge through conversation as much as through practice. One woman tells a story about her grandmother, who supposedly once saw the goddess Hathor in a dream and woke up with a necklace of protection lying on her chest. Another laughs softly, insisting the story grows more extravagant each year. But in Egypt, the line between everyday life and the divine is not rigid. The people believe the gods walk among them, guiding them through signs, dreams, and intuition. Stories like these strengthen bonds within the community and remind everyone that the divine world is always close. Nearby, a young mother rocks her infant gently in her arms. Babies in ancient Egypt are swaddled in linen strips to keep them warm and secure. She sings a soft, repetitive tune, a lullaby her mother once sang to her. The baby eventually relaxes, eyes drifting closed. She lays the child on a woven mat inside the house, placing a small amulet beside him. Amulets are everywhere in Egypt, symbols carved into stone or shaped from clay, used for protection, strength, fertility, and health. Even in sleep, protection is considered essential. While some women prepare food, others begin weaving cloth. Flax fibers, soaked in water from the Nile, are stretched and twisted into thread. These threads are then woven on a vertical loom that leans against a wall. The loom is simple but effective, and the resulting cloth, linen, is the primary textile in Egypt. Linen garments are light, comfortable, and perfectly suited to the climate. Wealthier families may dye their clothing or decorate it with beads, but most garments remain simple and practical. A woman's hands move swiftly across the loom, her fingers guiding threads with practiced ease. The gentle tapping of the loom adds a calming, rhythmic sound to the midday atmosphere. Not far away, a carpenter works under a shaded awning. He has positioned his work area carefully so that sunlight falls directly on the piece he's carving, but his own body remains shielded. Using bronze tools, he shapes a wooden box, smoothing its edges with a stone. Wood is valuable. Most of what is available comes from imported cedar, sycamore fig, or local acacia trees. With limited supply, carpenters must work skillfully and waste nothing. The box he's making will hold precious items, perhaps jewelry, documents, or ritual amulets. He pauses occasionally to check measurements using a thin piece of string, then continues carving with great focus. On the outskirts of the village, a small group of boys gather near the shade of a wall. They have made a ball from bundled papyrus reeds and tied it tightly with strips of cloth. With enthusiastic shouts, they begin a simple kicking game, using the wall as a rebound surface. Their laughter echoes across the open space. Childhood in ancient Egypt is full of games like this: running, wrestling, swimming, and playing with homemade toys. The boys stop briefly when a man carrying a large basket walks past, then resume their game with even greater energy. At another part of the village, older children carry baskets to collect animal dung, which is dried and used as fuel for cooking fires. It is not glamorous work, but it is essential. Wood is scarce in Egypt, so dried dung is among the most reliable fuel sources. The children chat as they gather the material, occasionally chasing one another playfully between tasks. Closer to the river, a group of young women kneel by large clay jars, scrubbing them clean with gritty sand. The jars are used for storing water, beer, and grain. Keeping them clean ensures the contents stay fresh in the heat. As they work, they occasionally glance toward the riverbank where fishermen continue pulling in their catch. The women discuss which families might get fresh fish today and which households might trade for dried fish instead. Around midday, the fishermen return to shore with baskets full of their morning catch. They unload the fish quickly, knowing heat can spoil it if left too long. A few fish will be dried and preserved, others will be sold or traded immediately. A woman approaches the fishermen with a small bundle of vegetables and a jar of beer. They assess the value of her goods, then agree to exchange them for 2 medium-sized fish. Bartering is an intricate dance that requires good judgment, fairness, and trust. As the heat intensifies, many villagers begin retreating indoors or to shaded outdoor spaces. Homes provide temporary escape from the sun. Roofs, too, become refuge, flat, shaded, and often cooler due to airflow. Some families climb ladders onto their rooftops to rest, prepare food, or simply enjoy the slight breeze. Inside one home, the mother from earlier returns to check on her sleeping child. The baby is still resting peacefully. She kneels and whispers a short prayer to Taweret, the protective goddess of childbirth and mothers. Taweret, depicted with the features of a hippopotamus, is both fierce and nurturing, a guardian for the vulnerable. The woman touches the small amulet beside her baby and smiles softly. Outside, a scribe finishes his administrative work and takes a brief break in the shade. He drinks water from a clay cup, careful not to spill any. Water must last until evening. He looks over the village, a sea of movement slowed by heat, but still vibrant, purposeful. He reflects briefly on the nature of his work. Few people can read or write, but those who can carry great responsibility. His records ensure fairness in land distribution, stability in harvest tracking, and order in legal matters. In Egypt, writing is not just communication, it is sacred. The written word is believed to preserve truth for eternity. By this time, the sun is nearly overhead and the air is dense with heat. The people of the village adapt as they always have, continuing essential tasks, but saving the heaviest work for cooler hours. The Nile shimmers brightly, reflecting the brilliant midday sun. Life continues steadily, unbroken, bound by routine and guided by a deep cultural understanding of the land and its cycles. The first half of the day is drawing to a close, but many hours remain, filled with the quiet resilience and timeless patterns that define a day in ancient Egypt. As midday settles over the Nile Valley, the landscape takes on a shimmering stillness. The heat radiates upward from the ground, warping the air in soft, wavy lines. Shadows grow short and dense, clinging beneath rooftops, trees, and awnings. For centuries, Egyptians have understood how to live in harmony with this heat. They do not fight it. They adjust, slow down, and carry out tasks that require less strain, reserving heavy labor for morning and late afternoon. Inside the village, many homes become islands of quiet activity. Mud brick walls, thick and porous, help insulate interiors from the harsh sun. The temperature inside is still warm, but the difference from outside is enough to offer relief. In one such home, a mother and her teenage daughter prepare ingredients for the largest meal of the day. They set out bowls of lentils, onions, and garlic, along with dried herbs stored carefully in woven baskets. The aroma of cooking begins to spread slowly through the room. A clay pot sits on a small hearth built into the floor, its flames fed by dried dung. The fire burns cleanly without wasting precious wood. The daughter slices onions with a simple copper knife, while the mother stirs a pot of lentils seasoned with cumin and coriander. These spices have been part of Egyptian cuisine since ancient times, prized for their flavor and ability to preserve food. Outside, in another corner of the village, a group of men rest under the shade of a large sycamore fig tree. They sit on low stools or on the packed earth, passing around a jug of water. Their conversation flows easily, drifting from crop conditions to personal stories to quiet observations about the river. One man tells a memory from his childhood, how during a particularly generous flood, the fields stretched farther than he had ever seen, and the grain grew taller than he had believed possible. Another man reminds him of a year when the flood was too low and the harvest barely sustained the village. These stories are not idle talk. They are lessons in survival, markers of how closely Egyptian life is tied to the river's moods. Near the tree, a young boy approaches with a carved wooden board in his hands. He kneels near his father and begins arranging small stones on its surface. The game is called Hounds and Jackals, a popular pastime in Egypt, involving a race of pieces along carved paths. The father smiles and joins him, the two moving their pieces quietly. Egyptian games often imitate aspects of life or the journey to the afterlife, blending entertainment with meaning. Yet for the boy, it is simply fun. A short distance away, a merchant walks through the village, carrying goods slung over his shoulder in a woven bag. He calls out gently, offering small quantities of incense, linen strips, oils, and amulets. Incense is particularly valuable in Egypt, not just for its pleasant fragrance, but for its use in religious offerings. The merchant pauses at the doorway of a home where a woman beckons him inside. She inspects a small vial of oil, rubbing it between her fingers, then offers a portion of grain in exchange. The trade is quick and respectful. In this world, economy is built on mutual trust, not coinage. Bartering keeps communities connected and reinforces social bonds. Meanwhile, at the edge of the village, a group of older boys gathers under the shade of a wall, engaged in a lively debate about who can run the fastest. Without warning, one boy takes off down the path, feet kicking up dust. The others shout and sprint after him, their laughter trailing behind. Running is a favorite pastime among children, especially during hotter hours when quieter spaces offer some relief from the heat. Their energy is boundless, their movements free. Childhood here is simple, anchored by daily tasks, yet filled with moments of pure play. Back inside a home, an elderly woman sits cross-legged on the floor, sorting through bundles of herbs tied with thin rope. She knows each plant intimately, its scent, its effects, its proper use. Egyptians possess a rich understanding of natural medicine. Some herbs soothe pain, others treat fever. Some are used in rituals to invite protection from spirits or to bring harmony to the household. The woman separates leaves from stems, chanting quietly under her breath as she works. It is a prayer she has spoken for decades, one her mother taught her, and one she hopes her granddaughter will someday learn. Along the riverbank, a fisherman rinses his morning catch in the cool water. He sorts the fish into baskets according to size, preparing some for drying and others for immediate trade. Drying fish is an essential skill. It allows food to be stored for weeks, providing nourishment long after fresh supplies run out. The fisherman spreads the fish on a wooden rack near the river, where the dry heat will quickly remove moisture. He glances at the sky, judging the heat and wind. Years of experience have made him an expert in predicting how long the drying process will take. Not far from him, a group of women continues washing clothes, scrubbing them against smooth stones. The sun dries the garments quickly, leaving them warm and crisp. As they work, they talk about the day's events: who is preparing for a wedding, who recently fell ill, who is traveling to a neighboring village. Social life in Egypt revolves around these shared chores. The riverbank is not just a place for work, it is a place for companionship, exchange of news, and communal rhythm. At another spot near the river, a young man repairs the hull of a small boat. He uses tar and resin to seal tiny cracks in the wood, applying each layer carefully. Boats are vital for life in Egypt, used for fishing, transport, trade, and even funerary ceremonies. A well-maintained boat is worth more than many households' most valuable possessions. The young man works with focus, determined to ensure the vessel is ready for the next journey. As midday leans toward early afternoon, the heat reaches its peak. The village becomes quieter. Movement slows. Even animals retreat into shade. A few dogs curl up beneath awnings, panting lightly. Chickens remain close to the cool earth beneath clay pots. The hum of bees near flowering plants fills the air with a gentle buzz. Life continues, but at a slower tempo, steady, calm, and deeply in tune with the environment. The people of ancient Egypt understand something modern life often forgets. The day does not need to be filled with constant motion to be meaningful. It must simply follow the rhythm of the world around it. And so, as the sun shines down with unwavering intensity, the village breathes deeply and waits for the air to cool. Only then will the next wave of work and life begin again. As the afternoon sun begins its slow journey downward, the intense heat begins to ease, very slightly at first, then more noticeably. In ancient Egypt, this time of day brings a subtle shift in mood. People re-emerge from shaded rooms, rooftops, and courtyards. The world regains movement and liveliness, as if the village itself is taking a deep breath after enduring the midday blaze. In the fields, farmers straighten their backs after resting beneath woven reed canopies. They wipe sweat from their brows, drink from clay jugs, and prepare to return to work. Some check their tools, sharpening the wooden blades that have dulled from morning labor. Others adjust small irrigation channels to ensure water continues flowing to the crops. Even though the heat is still strong, the worst is behind them, and the second half of the day's work can begin. At the edge of one field, a father walks with his teenage son. The boy is learning how to judge soil moisture, an essential skill. The father kneels and presses a handful of earth between his fingers, explaining how the soil should feel when ready for planting or watering. The boy copies his movements, trying to mimic the experienced touch. These small moments of instruction are how knowledge travels through generations. There are no formal schools for most people, no written manuals, just the wisdom of elders passed down through countless days like this one. Farther along the Nile, a fisherman prepares to launch his small boat again. Afternoon fishing offers different opportunities than the morning catch. Certain fish come closer to the surface as the day cools, and the fisherman hopes to supplement his earlier haul. He pushes the boat gently into the water, steps aboard, and begins paddling with slow, steady strokes. The river's surface reflects the golden light of the descending sun, turning the water into a shimmering mirror. On the opposite bank, where tombs and burial sites lie, a small group of workers begins their descent into a partially carved tomb. They carry lamps and tools, knowing they have only a few hours of workable light before night comes. Tomb workers are among the most skilled laborers in Egypt. Their job is not simply to carve stone, it is to build eternity. Each stroke of their chisels is meant to last forever, to honor the dead, and to guide souls into the afterlife. The walls within the tomb tell stories through carved scenes, offerings to the gods, images of daily life, and instructions from the Book of the Dead. The workers continue their precise tasks, aware of the sacred responsibility placed upon them. Back in the village, women resume activities set aside during the hottest hours. One group returns to weaving, adjusting threads on their looms as they continue creating linen cloth. Another begins pounding dried herbs for medicine. A mother checks on dough rising beneath a damp cloth. When she pulls it back, the dough has swelled, ready for baking. She shapes it into rounded loaves and carries them to a small outdoor oven. The scent of warming bread soon fills the air, signaling that the largest meal of the day is approaching. Children reappear in the open spaces of the village, this time with renewed energy. The heat no longer forces them into shade, so they resume running games, shouting and laughing freely. Two young boys crouch behind a wall using clay balls to play a simple throwing game. A group of girls tosses a woven ball back and forth, adding flourishes to make the game more entertaining. For them, the rhythms of the day are punctuated by these moments of joy. Near a corner of the village, an older man begins repairing a damaged basket. Using thin strips of palm fiber, he weaves with careful, deliberate motions. The basket will be used for storing produce, grains, or even clothes. Basketry is a vital craft in Egypt, as storage solutions must be lightweight and durable. The man's fingers move with expert precision, his technique shaped by decades of practice. In another shaded courtyard, a family sits around a low table, preparing vegetables for the evening meal. The father has returned from the fields, and his hands show the marks of a day's labor, dust, scratches, and sunburn. His younger children gather around him eagerly, asking about what he saw in the fields. He smiles and tells them about a heron he watched hunt for fish, or how a neighbor's donkey stubbornly refused to move. Simple stories, but precious moments of connection. A group of women carrying tall baskets walks through the village toward the riverbank. They plan to soak flax fibers for weaving. The fibers soften in water, making them easier to twist into thread. The women chat quietly as they walk, sharing thoughts on everything from family matters to temple festivals. Their shared labor deepens their bonds, weaving the community together as tightly as the fibers they prepare. As the sun lowers further, the shadows lengthen across the village. The light turns warmer, softer, casting a reddish glow over the clay walls. It is the time of day when Egyptians feel the world relax. The land itself seems to release the tension built up under the harsh midday sun. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves of palm trees, providing welcome relief. In the distance, a group of workers returns from the river docks. They unload sacks of grain, jars of beer, and crates of pottery brought from neighboring villages earlier in the day. Trade is essential for Egypt, and river travel allows goods to circulate smoothly. As they walk, they discuss the latest news from upstream, stories of unusual fish catches, changes in water level, or whispers about a festival approaching in a nearby town. Inside a modest workshop, a potter finishes shaping a wide jar. He carefully inspects the form, smoothing imperfections with a piece of wet cloth. This jar will be left to dry overnight, then fired in the morning. Pottery is not merely craft, it is infrastructure. Every household depends on jars for water, beer, oil, and grains, and so the potter's work is endless but meaningful. As the afternoon transitions into early evening, a sense of anticipation settles over the village. The hardest work of the day is done. Soon families will gather to share food, conversation, and the companionship that binds them through the cycles of sun and season. But for now, the village continues its steady hum, tireless, peaceful, anchored in routines that have shaped Egyptian life for centuries. As the sun dips lower in the sky, the Egyptian afternoon transitions into a calmer, gentler phase. The harsh glare fades, replaced by warm golden light that softens the edges of every building, every palm tree, every grain field stretching toward the river. This is a favorite time of day for many. Work continues, but with less urgency, and people allow themselves moments of rest, reflection, and quiet connection. In one home, a family prepares for the evening meal. The mother lifts the clay lid from a pot where lentils have simmered all afternoon. The rich fragrance of garlic and herbs fills the room. She stirs the stew slowly, watching the thick mixture bubble softly. The daughter brings freshly baked bread from the outdoor oven. The loaves are warm and crisp, their tops slightly darkened from the fire. She places them on a woven mat to cool. The family will eat soon after the father returns from the fields. Outside, the young children gather near a shallow well in the village center. They lower small clay cups into the water, laughing as they splash one another. Their laughter is light, musical, and free. They are unaware that these moments, simple, carefree, full of wonder, will shape their memories more deeply than any festival or celebration. In ancient Egypt, children are cherished, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of home, work, and community. A group of older girls moves through the village carrying baskets. Their task is to collect scraps for animal feed, bits of vegetables, leftover grain, fallen palm fruits. Their woven baskets bump gently against their hips as they walk. They gather food for goats, cattle, or donkeys, knowing animals are essential to village life. Without them, there would be no milk, no transport, no plowing assistance. Their care for the animals reflects the village's understanding that every life here holds value. At the reed-covered workshop near the river, a craftsman sorts through the goods he produced earlier in the day. He examines a set of woven mats, checking their edges for loose fibers. He tests a few newly made baskets for strength by pressing on their bases. Quality matters. Weak baskets break easily and cause loss of food or goods. He works silently, his movements steady and assured. Sunlight filters through the slatted walls of his workshop, creating striped patterns that shift slowly across the floor. Not far from him, a group of young men sits along the edge of the riverbank. Their feet dangle just above the water, and their voices rise and fall in conversation. They discuss everything from fishing luck to small village rumors. One mentions hearing that a neighboring settlement is preparing for a festival at a local temple. Another talks about a relative who is joining a work crew, constructing a granary in a nearby town. These conversations hint at the wider world beyond the village: trade routes, temple politics, construction projects, and river travel that binds Egypt together. A mother leads her young son by the hand toward the Nile. He carries a small jar. Together, they kneel at the river's edge, scooping cool water to refill the jar. She shows him how to hold it steady as the jar fills, explaining the importance of keeping water clean. Clean water is essential for cooking, drinking, and ritual purification. The boy listens carefully, aware he is learning something meaningful. Children absorb knowledge through moments like this, quiet, practical, woven into their daily lives. As they walk back to their home, the mother points toward the western horizon. The boy looks at the setting sun, its golden disk reflected in the river's surface. She tells him that the west is where the sun travels each night to enter the realm of the dead. For Egyptians, the western bank is sacred, home to tombs, funerary temples, and the promise of eternal life. The boy has heard these stories before, but each retelling deepens his sense of the unseen world. Near the granary at the edge of the village, a few men begin weighing sacks of barley using a simple balance scale. The granary is essential for storing surplus grain, protecting it from pests, rot, and theft. As one man records the weight of each sack, another patches a hole in the granary wall with fresh mud. A granary must be kept sealed and cool. It is the village's safety net in times of drought or poor harvest. In the shade of a sycamore tree, an elderly woman sits with a small group of children gathered around her. She tells them stories, tales of gods, animals, magical events, and past kings. Her voice is soft but expressive, weaving images in the minds of her listeners. The children lean forward, fascinated by the story of a clever fox who tricked a crocodile, or the tale of a young boy who discovered a hidden treasure. Storytelling is entertainment, education, and cultural preservation. Through these tales, the next generation inherits the values, fears, and hopes of their ancestors. A short walk away, a merchant receives goods from a trader who has arrived by boat. They examine jars of oil, bundles of herbs, and small statues carved from alabaster. Some items will be sold to villagers, others will be saved for larger markets in nearby towns. The merchant inspects each item carefully, ensuring the quality is worth the trade he offers. The economy here may not use coins, but it thrives on trust, fairness, and mutual need. As the afternoon continues, the temperature falls even more. A soft breeze sweeps through the village, rustling palm fronds and stirring dust along the pathways. People emerge from homes with renewed energy. A group of young boys begins a wrestling match in the open courtyard, their movements playful yet competitive. Their friends cheer them on, clapping and laughing. Wrestling has been part of Egyptian culture for thousands of years. Some of the oldest depictions of the sport appear in tombs dating back to the Old Kingdom. Nearby, a group of teenage girls sits together, practicing songs they hope to perform at an upcoming festival. Their voices rise in harmony, creating a beautiful, haunting melody. Music is central in Egyptian life, not just for celebration, but for work, ritual, comfort, and storytelling. The girls' song floats above the village, mixing with the last warmth of the afternoon. As the sun inches closer to the horizon, the village prepares for evening. Smoke from cooking fires begins to rise. The smell of baking bread, simmering stews, and roasted vegetables fills the air. People gather water, tidy courtyards, call children home, and prepare to share food with the people they love. The rhythm of the day is shifting once more, softening, slowing, becoming intimate. Night will arrive soon, bringing rest to a land that has already lived through thousands of days just like this one. As the sun sinks lower in the late afternoon sky, the golden light deepens into a rich amber that settles across the village like a warm blanket. This is one of the most beautiful moments of the day, a transition where work winds down, families draw closer, and the world takes on a peaceful glow. The long shadows stretch across courtyards and fields, painting the landscape with contrasts of light and dark. In ancient Egypt, evenings are not just restful, they are sacred, social, and deeply meaningful. Along one of the narrow village paths, a father returns home from the fields with his eldest son walking beside him. The father's movements are slower now, his steps heavier from the day's labor. Dust clings to his legs, his linen garment is marked with soil, and his skin glistens with the residue of sweat. Yet he walks with a sense of accomplishment. Work is not merely toil, it is contribution, identity, and survival. His son listens attentively as he describes the condition of the crops and teaches him how to recognize signs of a healthy barley field. These lessons, simple yet essential, are how knowledge is passed from generation to generation. At home, the mother sees them approaching and steps outside to greet them. The smell of warm bread and herbs floats from the doorway. The father smiles, tired but content. Before entering the home, he pours water from a small jar onto his hands to wash away dust and sweat. Cleanliness carries both practical and symbolic meaning in Egypt. Purifying oneself before meals or rituals honors the household gods who watch over the family. Inside, the family gathers around a low circular table made of reed and wood. The table is not elaborate, but it is central to their shared life. The mother serves the meal: lentil stew, fresh bread, roasted onions, and small pieces of dried fish, softened in a mixture of oil and herbs. For wealthier families, meals might include meat or fruit, but for most Egyptians, this humble spread is both nourishing and familiar. The children sit quietly at first, waiting as their father offers a short prayer. Egyptians believe deeply in gratitude to the land, to the river, to the gods, and to the countless forces that make life sustainable. He thanks the gods for the food, the river for its water, and the day for its opportunities. Only then do they begin to eat. As the family enjoys their meal, conversations flow naturally. The children share stories about their day, games they played, tasks they helped with, things they learned from their mother or older siblings. The father listens attentively, occasionally adding small lessons or gentle corrections. The mother shares news gathered from other women in the village, who is expecting a new baby, who is preparing for a long journey, which family needs help repairing their roof. Even simple conversations like these strengthen the ties that hold the community together. Outside the home, the village is filled with similar scenes. Families sit in circles, sharing food and stories. Smoke from cooking fires mixes with the cooling evening air, drifting upward in soft gray spirals. Dogs roam lazily, hoping for scraps. Chickens settle for the night in handmade coops. Goats bleat softly, adjusting into their resting spots. In one courtyard, a grandmother sits with her grandchildren, each holding a piece of fruit. She cuts slices from a ripe melon, handing them out carefully. As they eat, she tells them an ancient story, one she learned from her own grandmother decades ago. It is a tale about Ra, the sun god, who sails across the sky each day and fights the serpent Apophis each night to bring dawn. The children listen with wide eyes, imagining the great sun barge gliding through darkness. Storytelling is not just entertainment. It is how children learn about the world, the gods, and the values embedded in their culture. Near another home, a young couple sits together on a rooftop enjoying the breeze. Rooftops are common gathering places in the evenings, cooler, quieter, and slightly elevated above the dust of the ground. They watch the sun slowly descend behind the western horizon. The west is not just a direction, it is the realm of the dead, where the sun god travels each night. The couple sits close, quietly discussing their hopes, perhaps saving enough to buy a donkey, building a larger home, or planting more flax next season. Their dreams are modest, yet meaningful. Down the path, an elderly man sharpens a bronze blade using a smooth stone. He works slowly, stopping occasionally to inspect the edge. Bronze tools are valuable, requiring care and maintenance. As he sharpens, a young boy, the man's grandson, watches closely. The boy asks questions, eager to learn. The man explains patiently, showing him how to hold the blade, how to avoid chipping the metal, and how to ensure it stays sharp without becoming brittle. Skills like these are passed down not in structured lessons, but in small, intentional moments like this. Along the riverbank, the light becomes especially striking, reflecting in brilliant streaks across the rippling surface. A few fishermen return with small evening catches, others simply sit and enjoy the cool air. One man kneels to rinse his face in the water, letting the river wash away the fatigue of the day. The Nile feels different in the evening, still powerful but calmer, reflective, almost sacred. Many Egyptians whisper prayers or thanks to Hapi, the god of the Nile, believing the river's generosity must be honored daily. Farther along, a young woman collects water in a jar while humming a song. The song is old, older, perhaps, than any building in the village. It speaks of longing, patience, and the river's constant flow. Music is woven into Egyptian life, accompanying everything from childbirth to funerals, work to festivals, and quiet moments like this one. In the workshop district, artisans finish their tasks for the day. A potter inspects a jar he shaped earlier, making small adjustments before setting it aside to dry. A woodworker places his tools in a row, wiping them clean before locking them in a chest. Beadmaker counts the number of finished beads, sorting them by color and shape. These crafts are the pride of Egypt, skills refined across countless generations, producing goods admired across the ancient world. As the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the western desert, the world cools noticeably. Shadows stretch long and soft. Palm trees sway gently in the evening breeze. Lamps begin to glow in doorways as villagers light small clay vessels filled with oil and a linen wick. Their soft glow transforms the village into a warm, flickering landscape of gold and amber. Night is approaching, but even as darkness gathers, Egypt remains alive with quiet purpose, connection, and the gentle closure of a day well lived. As the sun finally slips below the western horizon, a soft darkness spreads slowly across the Nile Valley. The last threads of golden light fade into deep orange, then into muted shades of purple and blue. The heat of the day releases its grip, replaced by a cool breeze drifting off the river. Evening in ancient Egypt is not just the end of labor, it is the beginning of a quieter, more intimate world where families, neighbors, and rituals intertwine to complete the cycle of the day. In one home, the family finishes their meal. The father wipes his hands on a damp cloth and stretches his tired arms. The children lean back, satisfied and full, picking at the last crumbs of bread. The mother gathers the clay bowls and places them near the door, ready to be washed at the river tomorrow. Small clay lamps glow within the home, their flames reflected in the smooth surfaces of the jars, baskets, and walls. The flickering light creates gentle shadows that dance across the room, making the space feel warm, alive, and comforting. After dinner, families often step outside to enjoy the cool night air. The village pathways fill again with soft chatter. Women gather near doorways, discussing the events of the day. Men sit in small circles, recounting stories or exchanging thoughts on tomorrow's tasks, irrigating fields, repairing tools, or visiting nearby villages. Children run freely through the village, their energy renewed by the meal, their laughter echoing through the warm night. A group of boys chase each other with sticks, pretending to be warriors defending a temple from invaders. Their feet kick up dust as they run beneath the darkening sky. Girls gather to play songs with hand claps and simple rhythms. Some spin in circles, letting their linen dresses flare as they twirl. The air is filled with mirth and music, a joyful contrast to the stillness slowly descending over the fields and river. Not far away, an older couple sits together on the rooftop of their home. Rooftops in Egypt are more than storage spaces. They are extensions of the living area, used at night for sleeping, talking, or stargazing. The couple looks out over the village, watching lamps flicker one by one. From their vantage point, the Nile appears as a winding ribbon of dark blue, reflecting the first faint stars appearing in the sky. The man points toward a bright star rising in the east. It is Sopdet, Sirius, the star associated with the flooding of the Nile and the renewal of the land. The appearance of this star in the early morning sky marks the beginning of the new year in Egypt. Even though tonight is not the new year, the star's presence reminds them of the cyclical nature of life. Flood, growth, harvest, rest, always repeating, always dependable. In a nearby courtyard, a small group of teenage boys practices wrestling moves. Wrestling is not just a pastime, it's a respected sport in ancient Egypt. Tomb paintings show wrestlers locked in holds, flipping each other with impressive skill. The boys try to imitate the poses they've seen in older carvings, laughing whenever they fall into the dust. One boy manages a successful throw, earning cheers from his friends. Their playful competitiveness adds lively energy to the calm evening. A short walk away, the village healer, the elderly man with baskets of herbs, sits with a middle-aged woman concerned about a persistent cough. He listens carefully as she explains her symptoms. Then, with slow and deliberate movements, he opens a small jar of honey and mixes it with crushed leaves. He instructs her to take a spoonful before sleeping, assuring her that honey's soothing properties will ease her discomfort. Healing in ancient Egypt is both practical and spiritual. Remedies combine herbs, minerals, and rituals. The healer whispers a short protective prayer, invoking Sekhmet, the goddess associated with both disease and healing. Along the riverbank, the world is quieter. The boats that traveled throughout the day now rest, tied securely to wooden posts. Their reflections shimmer in the water's surface. A fisherman sits on the bank, mending a net in the dim light of an oil lamp. He prefers to do this work at night, when it is cooler and time seems to stretch calmly ahead of him. The rhythmic motion of weaving fibers soothes his mind. His thoughts drift to tomorrow's plans, checking traps, drying fish, preparing for market. His life flows as naturally as the river beside him. Further down the bank, a young woman kneels with a jar, washing it gently in the water. She moves slowly and deliberately, aware of the spirits that Egyptians believe inhabit the river. She speaks a quiet prayer to Hapi, thanking him for sustaining the village. When she rises, she secures the jar on her hip and heads home, her silhouette framed by the glowing horizon. In the heart of the village, older children gather around a storyteller. Tonight, he recounts the tale of the shipwrecked sailor, a famous Egyptian story about a man who survives a storm, lands on a magical island, and meets a giant serpent who gives him wisdom. The storyteller's voice rises and falls in dramatic waves, capturing the children's imagination. They sit still, mesmerized by the vivid details, the roar of the storm, the glint of treasure, the serpent's booming voice. Storytelling binds the community, offering escape, guidance, and entertainment. As darkness deepens, people begin preparing for sleep. Homes are swept one final time. Lamps are trimmed or extinguished. Children wash their faces with cool water from clay jars. Some families stay indoors to sleep, while others climb to their rooftops to rest beneath the open sky. The air is cooler, comfortable, perfect for sleeping above the warm earth. Inside one home, a mother tucks her youngest child into a soft mat near the wall. She places a protective amulet nearby, perhaps the image of Bez, the dwarf god who guards against nightmares. She kisses the child's forehead, then lies down beside him, listening to the soft breathing around her. The village gradually quiets. Dogs settle in doorways, goats rest in small enclosures. The breeze rustles gently through palm leaves, and above it all, the stars shine brightly, so many, so clear, that it feels as though the heavens are descending to meet the earth. Night in ancient Egypt is peaceful, steady, and full of meaning. It is a time for families, for rest, for stories, and for the quiet rituals that prepare the soul for another day. And even in darkness, life continues, softly, patiently, in harmony with a world shaped by the Nile and watched over by the gods. Night has fully spread across the Nile Valley now, covering the land in a deep, soft darkness, broken only by the glow of small oil lamps and the shimmering reflection of moonlight on the river. The village has grown hushed. The bustle and brightness of the day feel far away, replaced by a gentle quiet that lets the mind wander, rest, or dream. Ancient Egyptians value the peace of night, seeing it not only as a time for sleep, but as a sacred period when the world shifts into the realm of gods, spirits, and hidden power. In one household, the family gathers for a final moment before bed. The mother sits on a woven mat with her youngest daughter in her lap, brushing the child's hair with a simple wooden comb. The child leans sleepily against her, eyes half closed. The father, sitting nearby, adjusts the wick of a small oil lamp, ensuring it burns slowly and safely through the night. Egyptians rarely sleep in total darkness. A faint light wards off insects, animals, and unwanted spirits. The flickering flame casts gentle, comforting shadows on the walls. The father then stands and kneels before a small household shrine. Nearly every family keeps one, sometimes a carved figure, sometimes a simple painted image, often placed on a shelf or in a niche. Tonight he whispers a quiet prayer to Bes, the protective dwarf god known for guarding homes, mothers, and children. Bes is not elegant or noble. He is fierce-looking, jovial, and powerful, perfect for chasing away harm. The father asks him to watch over the family through the night. In the next home, an elderly woman sits alone by her lamp, mixing herbs in a small clay bowl. She prepares a sleep tonic for her aching joints. Ancient Egyptian medicine is a mixture of knowledge and ritual, herbs for the body, prayers for the spirit. She crushes mint leaves and fenugreek seeds, then stirs in a spoonful of warm honey. As she mixes, she murmurs a protective verse. Her voice is soft, fragile, but steady. She drinks slowly, savoring the sweetness, then lies down on her mat and pulls a linen sheet over herself. Outside, the temperature has dropped significantly. The warm sand of the day has cooled, releasing long breaths of stored heat into the night air. A few people walk quietly through the village paths, finishing last chores, tying animals securely, collecting tools left outside, checking the water jars to ensure enough remains for morning. The night air carries faint smells of the river, clay, and drying straw. This aroma is timeless, unchanged across millennia. On one rooftop, a group of relatives settles down to sleep outdoors. The open sky feels expansive and calm, the stars brighter than any lamp below. Egyptians know these stars well. They recognize constellations that represent gods, spirits, and mythical beings. A young boy points excitedly toward Orion, which they call Sa, the celestial embodiment of Osiris. His older sister identifies Sopdet, Sirius, the star that heralds the flooding of the Nile. Their uncle, lying beside them, tells a story about the Milky Way, which Egyptians see as a celestial river mirroring the Nile below. The rooftop is quiet except for soft conversations and the rustling of linen blankets. Soon, some of the children drift off to sleep beneath the open sky, their faces illuminated by the faint silver light of the moon. Near the edge of the village, two men walk together in the dim glow of their lamps. They are night guards, responsible for watching over the granary and outer streets. Villages rely on them to deter thieves, protect grain reserves, and identify threats from wild animals. Although villages are peaceful, precaution is always necessary. The men speak quietly, discussing recent changes in the river level, which they observed earlier while checking the banks. One mentions rumors of crocodiles moving closer to farms, a concern that requires caution and respect. As they make their rounds, they pause to listen to the sounds of the night. Crickets chirp softly. Frogs croak from the reeds near the river. An owl hoots from a high perch. These sounds are familiar and welcome, signs that the world is functioning as it should. The guards nod to each other and continue their walk. Down by the river, a fisherman sits alone beside his boat, watching the water drift silently past. He enjoys these moments of solitude. The river at night is mysterious, deeper, almost alive with its own ancient mind. He dips his hand into the cool water and feels the slow current pressing against his skin. The moonlight paints a shimmer across the surface, creating a silver path that leads toward the horizon. The fisherman whispers a short prayer to Hapi, the spirit of the river, thanking him for today's catch and asking for another tomorrow. Egyptians treat the Nile with extraordinary reverence. It is not merely a river, but a living god who sustains them. After his prayer, the fisherman stands, ties his boat more securely, and begins walking home. Back in the village, a group of teenagers gathers quietly in a small courtyard. They have finished their chores, and before they scatter to their own homes, they talk beneath the open sky. Some share dreams of joining work crews in larger towns. Others talk about learning trades or saving enough to buy livestock. One girl speaks passionately about wanting to become a temple musician, singing hymns in ceremonies honoring Hathor. Her friends encourage her, believing she has the talent. Their voices blend softly with the soothing ambiance of night. A few fireflies drift through the air, their faint glows drifting between the shadows. The teenagers eventually disperse, each heading home with quiet steps. Inside another home, a scribe finishes his evening reading. He has been studying a collection of hymns written on papyrus. The words speak of creation, order, and the eternal struggles between light and darkness. He rolls the scroll gently and places it in a protective jar. Before he sleeps, he takes a moment to clean his reed pens and check his ink cakes for the next day. His tools are precious, symbols of knowledge, service, and social standing. Once he finishes, he extinguishes his lamp and lies down, confident that the order of the written world will resume with dawn. The village continues settling deeper into night. Lamps dim one by one, conversations quiet, animals fall asleep. A gentle breeze carries the smell of earth, water, and distant incense. The sky grows darker, filled with clusters of stars that tell stories older than any pyramid or temple. Ancient Egypt at night is a world of softness, gentle light, gentle voices, gentle movements. The land rests, the people rest, and beneath the surface a silent hope forms that tomorrow will bring good water, stable weather, and the continued blessing of the gods. As the deepest part of night approaches, the village breathes slowly and peacefully, wrapped in the protective arms of a long and timeless silence. The deepest part of night has arrived. The sky above the Nile Valley is vast and dark, filled with stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. The moon climbs higher, its pale glow illuminating the rooftops, the quiet river, and the winding paths of the village. Even at this hour, the land feels alive, not with sound or movement, but with presence. Ancient Egypt at night is a place where the boundary between the seen and unseen feels thin, where the spiritual and physical worlds lie side by side. Most families are asleep now, breathing softly beneath linen sheets. The cool air is a comfort after the long heat of the day. Some rest indoors on mats spread neatly across the floor. Others sleep outside on the rooftop, enjoying the night breeze and the open sky. Their bodies relax, their minds drift, and dreams begin to weave themselves from memories, hopes, and the stories passed down through generations. In one house, a young boy sleeps beside his mother. His small hand rests on the corner of her garment, as if seeking comfort even in dreams. His chest rises and falls steadily. On the wall above him hangs a small protective amulet carved from clay in the shape of the god Horus with his falcon head. His father placed it there earlier in the evening, asking Horus to watch over the child's dreams and guide him through the night safely. Across the village, a teenage girl lies awake on her rooftop mat. She cannot sleep yet. Her mind is full of thoughts. She stares up at the stars, wondering about her future. Will she become a weaver like her mother? Will she marry someone from the village or someone from another town along the Nile? Will she ever travel? Her eyes trace the constellations that Egyptians have mapped for thousands of years. She recognizes the shape of the celestial bull, the divine boat of Ra, and the river of stars that mirrors the river she lives beside. As she watches the sky, she feels connected to something ancient and eternal. Not far away, a new mother sits awake beside her newborn child. The baby sleeps fitfully, letting out soft cries now and then. The mother rocks gently, humming a tune older than memory itself, a melody passed from mother to mother across countless generations. She occasionally feels anxiety rise within her. Caring for a newborn is exhausting, even in a society where neighbors and relatives gladly help. But she also feels incredible love, a deep devotion that fills her chest as she watches her child sleep. She whispers a prayer to Taweret, the protective goddess of childbirth, and slowly her fears subside. Outside, the village is shrouded in calm. The air carries faint scents of earth, dry grass, and distant river water. A few dogs curl up at the base of mud-brick walls, their bodies rising and falling slowly. Goats and sheep sleep in their enclosures, the occasional soft bleat breaking the silence. Small insects hum faintly in the background, creating an unobtrusive nighttime chorus. On the far side of the village, the two night guards continue their rounds. Their lamps glow dimly as they walk along the edge of the granary. They listen carefully for unusual sounds. A rustle in the bushes makes them pause, likely a small animal, but they check anyway. Taking precautions is part of their duty. Satisfied that all is safe, they continue. They talk quietly as they walk, sharing stories about their families, discussing next season's crops, or recalling memories from their youth. For them, the night shift is not merely responsibility, it is companionship and purpose. Near the riverbank, an elderly scribe who could not sleep decides to step outside and breathe the cool night air. He walks slowly, leaning on a wooden cane. His joints ache, but the quiet night brings a strange comfort. The moonlit path leads him toward the water. He sits on a stone by the river's edge and gazes at the reflection of the stars on the surface. The river looks completely different at night, mysterious, dark, and endlessly deep. It feels like a mirror to the heavens, connecting the world below to the world above. The scribe closes his eyes and reflects on a lifetime of work, writing legal documents, recording harvests, teaching apprentices how to hold a reed pen properly. He thinks of all the names he has written on papyrus, all the stories he has preserved. He knows his work may not bring him riches, but it brings him something more valuable: purpose. In a world where memory fades, writing ensures that nothing important is lost. As he sits by the river, he whispers a soft prayer to Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom, thanking him for guiding his hand throughout his long career. Farther along the bank, a fisherman wakes from a light doze inside his boat. He often sleeps here, finding peace in the gentle rocking of the water. He sits up, stretches, and listens to the quiet night. The river's calm surface glows under the moonlight. He thinks about waking early to catch fish before dawn. But for now, he lies back down, closing his eyes again as the boat floats gently beside the reeds. Back in the village, a woman briefly wakes from sleep. She sits up, noticing her husband stirring as well. They share a quiet moment, listening to the stillness around them. Sometimes at night, people wake simply to appreciate the cool air or to adjust a blanket. She steps outside for a moment, looking out over the rooftops and faint glowing lamps. She marvels at the silence, at the beauty of a world untouched by the endless noise of future ages. Then she returns inside, lying back down beside her husband. In one home, a man experiencing insomnia sits up and lights his lamp. He takes out a small wooden box containing carved dice and tiny gaming pieces. Sometimes playing a quiet game helps his mind settle. He moves the pieces slowly, following strategies he has learned from countless evenings of practice. His lamp flickers as he concentrates, creating dancing shadows across the room. Across the village, a young boy rolls over in his sleep and dreams vividly. He dreams of the Nile swelling with abundant water, of grain taller than he is, of sailing to faraway lands with bright-colored sails. Dreams in ancient Egypt were believed to hold meaning, messages from gods or glimpses into unseen realms. Whether the boy remembers the dream tomorrow will determine whether it becomes a story shared with his family. Slowly, the night deepens further. The air grows even cooler. The moon continues its journey across the sky. Lamps burn lower. The last voices fade. The guards walk their final rounds. The village becomes completely still, wrapped in the quiet magic of a civilization that has mastered the art of living in harmony with land, sky, and time. In these hours before dawn, ancient Egypt rests completely, renewing itself for another day shaped by the river, the sun, and the timeless rhythms of life. The final hours of night settle over the Nile Valley like a soft, dark blanket. It is the quietest part of the entire day, those deep, still moments when even the animals rest, when lamps have burned down to fading embers, when voices are silent and movement is rare. Ancient Egypt breathes slowly during this time, as though gathering strength for the next sunrise. The land feels ancient, timeless, suspended between the world of dreams and the promise of morning. Inside one house, a father wakes briefly before dawn. He is used to rising early, and his body recognizes the shift in the night, even without seeing the sky. He listens carefully. There is no noise except the slow, rhythmic breathing of his family. He shifts slightly, adjusting the linen sheet over his legs, then lies still again. The coolness of the night air soothes his tired muscles. In the morning, he will return to the fields, but for now, he savors these last moments of rest. Elsewhere in the village, the night guards pause to sit for a moment on a low stone wall. They have been walking their rounds for hours. One sets his small oil lamp on the ground beside him, the flame dim but steady. The other stretches his legs and listens to the nocturnal sounds. A distant owl calls from the palm groves. Crickets create a gentle, constant hum. The guards speak quietly about how the river seemed slightly lower tonight, a sign that the flood season may gradually be approaching its end. For Egyptians, even the smallest change in water level is important. It carries messages about the future harvest, about prosperity or difficulty. Near the river, a crocodile slides silently into the water, creating a faint splash. Although dangerous, crocodiles are also respected. They are creatures of Sobek, the crocodile god, protector of the Nile's strength. People keep their distance and avoid traveling too close to the water's edge at night. Even fishermen know better than to challenge the creatures that rule the river after dark. Inside another home, a mother wakes from a dream. She sits up quietly, careful not to disturb her husband sleeping beside her. She takes a moment to breathe and remember the dream's details: a field full of flowering lotus, a tall figure in white, the sound of distant chanting. Dreams for Egyptians are not meaningless. They are messages, symbols, or warnings. She whispers a short prayer to the goddess Isis, asking for clarity and protection. Then she lies down again, hoping to slip back into peaceful sleep. Several homes away, a young apprentice scribe lies awake. He cannot stop thinking about the lessons he is learning: hieroglyphs, mathematics, stories of gods and kings. Sleep escapes him as he imagines himself one day writing important documents or working in a temple archive. The moonlight filters through the small window, casting pale bands of light across the floor. He takes a reed pen from beside his mat and traces shapes in the air, symbols he is learning to master: the sign for life, the sign for water, the sign for bread. Even without ink or papyrus, he practices, determined to carve a future built on knowledge. Along the rooftop of another house, a couple sleeps soundly. Their bodies rise and fall gently with each breath. Their mats are arranged side by side beneath the vast sky, and a linen cloth covers them partially. The stars above seem countless, each one sharp and bright. Egyptians believe that the stars are manifestations of spirits, the blessed dead who shine forever in the heavens. Sleeping beneath them brings comfort, as though ancestors watch over the living. Behind one home, a donkey shifts in its sleep, nudging against a wooden post. The soft sound echoes faintly. A young goat bleats quietly in its enclosure, half dreaming. The night carries these small noises across the village, subtle reminders that life goes on even when most people sleep. At the granary, the guards stop for a moment to check the mud-brick walls. They tap gently, listening for hollowness, a sign of insect activity or structural weakness. They ensure no cracks have formed. Grain is life. Any damage threatens the security of the entire village. Satisfied, they continue their rounds, moving through the darkened pathways with slow, steady steps. Closer to the river, a fisherman who fell asleep on his boat stirs. The faint chill of early morning settles over him. He opens his eyes slowly, gazing up at the fading stars. He sits up, stretches, and listens to the light splash of water against the wooden hull. He senses dawn approaching even though the sky remains dark. His instinct as a fisherman is finely tuned. Soon he will cast his nets again. Inside a nearby home, a woman wakes to feed her newborn. She lifts the child gently, holding him close to her chest. He suckles quietly while she hums a tune almost without thinking, a lullaby inherited from mothers long before her. In these quiet hours, she feels deeply connected to her ancestors, to all the women throughout Egyptian history who nurtured children under the same moonlight. She closes her eyes, letting the tiredness wash through her as the baby feeds. Meanwhile, the elderly healer wakes from a light sleep. His joints ache, and he decides to take another small drink of his honey and herb mixture. He sits on his mat, breathing slowly, then stands with effort. The lamp near his bed glows dimly, and he adjusts the wick. He knows many in the village rely on him. Tomorrow he will gather more herbs, visit the home of a sick child, and deliver remedies requested earlier in the day. Even in old age he carries responsibilities that keep him deeply tied to his community. A short distance away, a young woman who had stayed awake earlier now sleeps deeply. Dreams roll through her mind like gentle waves, images of music, of temple walls painted with bright colors, of festivals filled with dancing and laughter. She dreams of a future where she sings alongside other women, performing sacred hymns in honor of Hathor, goddess of beauty and joy. Her dreams feel real, vivid, almost prophetic. As the final hour before dawn approaches, the village becomes quieter still. Lamps have burned to their last drops of oil. The stars fade slightly as the eastern sky begins to shift ever so subtly. The darkness thins. A faint, pale haze begins to form along the horizon. This is the turning point, the moment between night and day, dream and awakening, rest and renewal. Soon, ancient Egypt will rise again. Soon, the first footsteps will echo across the village paths. Soon, the world will begin its slow, steady rhythm once more. But for now, in these last precious minutes of night, the village remains wrapped in stillness, a cradle of peace beneath the stars, untouched by time. A faint glow begins to appear on the eastern horizon, so soft and pale that it almost blends with the night sky. This light is barely noticeable at first, just a thin band of gray merging with the darkness. But for those attuned to the rhythms of the Nile, it signals a shift. The deepest part of night is ending. A new day prepares to enter the world. The first to sense it are not people, but birds. A single chirp breaks the silence, then another. Soon the reed beds along the river stir with life. Small birds flutter between reeds, shaking off sleep as if they, too, recognize the coming dawn. Their movements create a gentle rustling sound, whispering across the river bank and through the palms. In the village, a rooster crows once, loud, clear, and confident. The sound echoes off mud-brick walls. A dog lifts its head briefly, then settles back into sleep. A goat shifts in its enclosure, nudging against a wooden post. The smallest signs of the coming morning ripple through the air. Inside a modest home, the mother awakens. She opens her eyes slowly, sensing the change before seeing it. The darkness is no longer absolute. It carries a hint of softening. She sits up quietly, careful not to disturb her sleeping children. Stretching her arms, she inhales the coolness that lingers from the night. This hour, just before dawn, is her favorite. Peaceful, gentle, filled with possibility. She stands and moves to the doorway, stepping outside into the dim village path. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant river water. She glances upward. The sky above still holds many stars, but their brightness has dulled slightly. She knows she has a short window before the demands of the day begin again. She returns inside and gently shakes her eldest daughter, who helps with morning tasks. The girl wakes slowly but without complaint. Together they begin preparing breakfast, bread saved from the previous day, dates stored in a basket, and a small jug of beer. The girl stirs the remaining embers of the hearth, blowing softly until a small flame returns. In a few moments the home begins to warm with the first signs of activity. Across the village, similar scenes unfold. Lamps are relit. Doors open. Quiet footsteps tap against hardened earth. Women collect jars and prepare for another journey to the river. Men stretch, rubbing sore muscles from the previous day's labor. The returning cycle of life begins gently, without urgency or noise. On one rooftop, the teenager who had watched the stars earlier wakes from a light sleep. She blinks at the faint glow rising behind distant date palms. She listens to the shifting sounds around her, the rooster crowing again, birds beginning their morning calls, the soft murmur of voices as neighbors stir. She sits up, wrapping a linen cloth around her shoulders, enjoying the final minutes of cool air before the heat of day reclaims the land. The night guards finish their final round. They walk to the center of the village and set down their lamps, their flames now small and flickering. The guards stretch their arms, nodding to each other with quiet satisfaction. Another safe night. Another night where the granary remained secure, the animals protected, and the people slept without fear. Their work is done. Soon they will rest while others begin their day's duties. Near the granary, a young man rises early to grind grain for his family's morning bread. He sets 2 heavy grinding stones on the ground and pours a handful of barley onto the lower slab. He begins pushing the upper stone forward and back, the rhythmic scraping sound marking the very first labor of the day. The sound is familiar, one of the defining textures of Egyptian mornings. It is a sound heard in every village, every home, every generation. At the riverbank, the fisherman who slept on his boat rises as the sky grows lighter. He stands and stretches, taking a deep breath of cool air. The surface of the Nile is nearly motionless, reflecting the faint gray-blue colors of dawn. This is the perfect moment to begin fishing. He pushes his boat gently into deeper water and casts his net with practiced ease. Ripples expand outward, breaking the stillness. He knows that the morning catch is often the best. Fish rise close to the surface now, drawn by the changing temperature. Not far away, a group of women arrives at the river, carrying jars made of clay and baskets woven from reed. They greet each other softly, quiet voices out of respect for the early hour. Kneeling at the water's edge, they wash jars, rinse cloths, and fill containers with fresh water. The surface ripples around their hands. The light grows stronger each minute, revealing more of the river's gentle beauty. Nearby, a young boy helps his mother by holding a small cup while she pours water into a larger jar. He tries to be careful, steady, responsible. The mother watches him with a smile, pleased by his growing maturity. These small moments, helping with water, carrying grain, observing adult tasks, are how children learn the skills they will need in life. Back in the village center, the baker arrives at his workshop. He is always one of the earliest to rise. He opens the clay oven door and begins preparing the fire. Soon the smell of rising dough, warming yeast, and baked bread will fill the air. Bread is the foundation of every Egyptian meal, and the baker's work sustains the entire community. As he kneads fresh dough, he hums a simple morning tune, his hands moving with steady confidence. In a nearby courtyard, a father stands with his young son. The sky has transformed from dark blue to soft pink. The first birds fly overhead in small groups. The father points to the horizon, telling the boy that the sun god Ra will soon rise from the underworld and begin his journey across the sky. The boy listens with wide eyes, imagining the solar bark cutting across the heavens. Each morning retells this story, reinforcing the belief that life follows cosmic order, predictable, stable, divinely guided. As the faint haze of dawn becomes a clear glow, the family who slept on their rooftop stirs. One by one they rise, stretching beneath the sky. They roll up the linen mats and carry them downstairs. They wash their faces with cool water from a jar. Their day begins with quiet gratitude. Across the village, smoke begins to rise from hearths. Tools are gathered, children are nudged awake. The sounds of night give way to the sounds of life beginning again. The eastern horizon brightens further, pink, gold, and finally pale yellow. Dawn is moments away. The cycle is nearly complete. In ancient Egypt, every new day is not simply time passing, it is renewal, it is stability. It is the return of order, light, and purpose. And as the sun prepares to rise once more, the village stands ready to greet it. The sky in the east brightens steadily, shifting from a pale yellow glow to a soft, radiant gold. The darkness that covered the Nile Valley only minutes ago now retreats like a veil being gently pulled away. The land emerges from shadow, shapes sharpen, colors return, and life begins to move with growing momentum. The first sliver of sunlight appears above the horizon, thin, bright, and impossibly pure. It glimmers across the surface of the Nile, turning the water into a shimmering ribbon of gold that stretches endlessly in both directions. For the ancient Egyptians, this moment is more than dawn. It is rebirth. The sun god Ra has completed his nightly journey through the underworld and rises again to bring light, order, and life to the world. As the sun climbs, the village awakens fully. A rooster crows loudly, as if announcing the new day to all who have not yet noticed. Birds flutter from their nests, sweeping across the sky in graceful arcs. Their calls fill the air with a lively melody that echoes through courtyards, across rooftops, and between palm trees, swaying gently in the early morning breeze. Inside one home, the father rises from his mat and steps outside. He stretches deeply, feeling the morning sun warm his skin. This warmth carries meaning, comfort, familiarity. It signals that another day of work awaits him, a day that will mirror countless days before it, a day shaped by cycles as old as the land itself. Yet he feels a quiet gratitude. To wake beneath the sun is to be alive, to be part of the eternal order that guides the universe. He returns inside and wakes his sons. They rub their eyes and yawn, still half asleep. Soon they will help tend the fields, fetch water, or assist with animals. Their linen garments rustle softly as they dress. The morning light streams through the doorway, bathing the home in gentle brightness. In another part of the village, a mother finishes preparing the first small meal of the day: bread, dates, and a bit of leftover stew warmed over the hearth. She calls her daughters to join her. They sit together, eating quietly while the day settles into place around them. The youngest giggles as she drops a small date and chases it across the floor. The mother laughs softly, brushing the child's hair back from her face. These simple moments are the heartbeat of family life, small, fleeting, but meaningful. Not far away, the baker pulls the first loaves of the day from his clay oven. The smell of warm bread drifts through the air, spreading across the village like a signal that the day has officially begun. He arranges the loaves in neat rows, each one a small symbol of nourishment and stability. Bread is the foundation of the Egyptian diet. It feeds workers in the fields, priests in the temples, children in their homes. The baker's work is essential. Villagers begin to gather near his workshop. They greet each other warmly, short phrases of blessing and goodwill shared between neighbors who know one another's lives as well as their own. A few women trade baskets of vegetables or jars of beans for fresh bread. A farmer exchanges dried fish for several loaves. The morning marketplace forms naturally, seamlessly, without formal stalls or announcements. It is simply part of life. At the riverbank, the fisherman pulls in his early morning net. The light now reflects strongly off the ripples, revealing flashes of silver beneath the surface. He gathers several fish into a basket, satisfied with the catch. The river is generous today. He whispers a quiet thank you to Hapi before stepping onto the shore. Soon he will take part of the catch home and trade the rest in the village. Nearby, a group of women kneels beside the water, washing jars, rinsing cloth, and filling containers for the day ahead. Their reflections shimmer on the calm surface. They talk softly as they work, discussing last night's dreams, today's tasks, tomorrow's expectations. One woman mentions a coming festival at a temple several miles away. Another wonders if the Nile will rise slightly more this week. Their voices mingle with the flowing water, creating a gentle morning chorus. On the edge of the village, a group of farmers prepares to head into the fields. They gather tools, hoes, baskets, small sickles, and check the irrigation channels. The sun has risen enough to cast long shadows behind them. The fields await. The rhythmic work of digging, planting, and tending will soon begin. Before they start, one of the older farmers pauses. He turns to face the rising sun, lifts his tray of seed slightly, and whispers a short prayer. The others join him. It is not a formal ritual, but a simple act of gratitude. They depend on the sun, the river, the soil, and the gods. A moment of reverence sets the tone for the day. Back in the village, a scribe walks briskly toward the administrative house. His tools, reed pens, ink cakes, folded papyrus, are neatly packed in a small leather satchel. He nods politely to neighbors as he passes. There are records to check, reports to update, and land measurements to confirm. His day will not be spent in the sun, but in the quiet work of preserving order. And he, too, feels a sense of purpose. Children emerge from their homes, energized by the new day. Some chase each other through the paths. Others help their parents with morning chores. A group of boys kicks a ball of bundled papyrus reeds. Girls practice songs while carrying small baskets. Their laughter, light and clear, fills the village with youthful energy. On a rooftop, an elderly woman sits cross-legged, watching the sun climb higher. Her bones ache, but her spirit is steady. She has lived through many seasons, many floods, many dawns, just like this one. She smiles softly, knowing that each new day is a gift. She traces the shape of a constellation with her finger, whispering a thank you to the gods who watch over her family. As the sun rises fully above the horizon, the shadows shorten. The breeze warms. The sounds of labor return, hoes striking soil, jars clinking, animals bleating, conversations flowing. The whole village pulses with purpose once again. A new day in ancient Egypt has begun. Life returns to motion, steady, humble, cyclical, sacred. The night has passed. Ra journeys across the sky once more. The Nile continues to flow beneath him, and the people of Egypt step forward into another day, repeating rhythms that have shaped their world for thousands of years. This is not just a day, it is part of an endless cycle, one that defines a civilization, sustains a people, and echoes through history. And as the sun rises higher, the village becomes fully alive again. Work begins, voices rise, life continues, just as it always has, just as it always will.